My son and I are on day 6 of a 7-day long adventure that has been pretty awesome. And we were talking around the campfire last night about, planning a trip like this, things that, we could improve on, things that, we really liked. And you planned this entire trip. And I thought it would be really cool this morning over a cup of coffee, turn on the camera and share with them some tips and tricks on planning a trip and some things that you learned. I think they'll find that very interesting. So we've got a lot to talk about this morning. And where are we? Beautiful, beautiful campsite. Stay tuned. Welcome to Trail Recon. I'm Brad, and this is my son Devin, and we have been just having the most amazing adventure, right?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It's just a crazy experience.
Yeah, we've been to some great places. We've had some minor changes that we've had to make along the way, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But let me just set the stage on where we're at right now. So we are in northern Utah on this beautiful lake. There is only like 2 people around for miles, and we have been working our way up through Utah to Idaho. We were in Montana and then Wyoming, and now we're kind of working our way back south. This is our second to the last day, and dude, what a trip you have planned.
I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah.
I just couldn't have imagined that it would be this cool, honestly.
Yeah. But it was not an easy process. Because I kind of threw it at you, and I'm like, look, this is kind of our last adventure for a while because you're getting ready to head off for your master's program, and I wanted you to kind of take the reins and plan this trip, and we'll get into a little bit about that first, but I want to talk a little bit about just kind of some of the process that I go through when I'm planning a trip, and then we'll share some of your lessons learned from this adventure. And let me just tell you, it's gone really, really well. You might be the new Trail Recon trip planner after this is over, but I got some notes down here that we took last night over the campfire. And you have some experiences with some of this, so we'll talk a little bit about this. So the first thing that I take into consideration when I'm planning the trip is who I'm going with, because I think that's the most important thing. For me, I don't mind going camping by myself, but it's just not that much fun. It's better when you have somebody to share the experience with and the memories, right? I mean, think of all the things that we have seen this trip.
Just wouldn't have been the same if you saw it by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, now we have these stories for a lifetime of everything, the animals we saw, the places we were at, the cold weather, and we have all those experiences. But when you're thinking about who is going to come with you, make sure it's somebody that you enjoy spending time with. Because, 7 days is a long time to be, with somebody that entire time. And you want to make sure that they have the same adventure mindset. They're flexible when things have to change, and they have a positive attitude. Maybe that they enjoy some coffee. I think that's important, right?
Definitely.
But you got to love the adventure. And so making sure that who you are going with, I think, is first and foremost. The next thing, and this is usually the biggest restraint for most people, is how much time do you have? How much time can we take off? We've been talking about this trip for
a long time, months,
right? But we needed to wait until you were finished with school. And so you just finished finals like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And then it was like, all right, let's make this happen. But you got to figure out how much time. Some people can only afford to do it for a weekend, and there's nothing wrong with that. Take, a nice long 3-day weekend. But if you have the opportunity to do 7 or 10 days, you can travel pretty far. We put in over 2,000 miles already.
Yeah. I mean, you can do a cool trip in a weekend, but if you have a week, you can go somewhere pretty amazing.
Like this. We've been pretty amazing places. So how much time? And then where are you going? And that's important because it doesn't necessarily have to be this massive long trip like we've done. This has been pretty extensive, but you can still, there are so many places usually around where you live that you can just go explore some awesome places around, usually within 100 miles of where you live, and have some awesome adventures. And we've got a big truck and looks like a horse trailer driving by. So forgive us, guys. It's a big dirt road back there, and it was a pretty active last night, so we might hear some cars coming along the way. But where you are going, don't take on more than you need to. You can go have some cool adventures and not have to travel 700 miles, 800 miles, 2,000 miles to do that. So think about that when you are planning your trip. Maybe start smaller, maybe do a shorter period of time where it's just a couple days and you're staying kind of close to home to kind of get your feet wet. Instead of just telling your son, hey, we're going up to Wyoming and you got 7 days, go plan it. That was a lot to throw on your plate, but you did well with it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Vehicle capabilities. That came into play for this trip. Because we took the Ram truck and the trailer, and so there are some pros and cons to taking a full-size vehicle and a trailer on a trip. But knowing what the capabilities of all the vehicles in your group is super important, because if you're going to hit some moderate to difficult trails, are the vehicles that you're going with capable, and are the driver's skills going to be able to manage that? We had to make some changes because when you were planning this out, it would have been tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
You had planned what would have been a really, really cool trail.
Yeah.
What was the trail?
Rattlesnake Gulch.
Rattlesnake Gulch. I think we probably could have done it in the Ram Power Wagon with the trailer, but we're by ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we're solo. We're not with anybody else. So we don't have another vehicle to help us recover. So we really had to play it smart on this trip. And I was like, man, I would love to go back there, but let's do it next time. Let's take the Jeep and let's take somebody with us because it looked beautiful. We're definitely going to have to do it. But I think it was just kind of erring on the safe side to not do that trail. So everything we did pretty much through this whole thing was easy to moderate. And there was a couple times when we were having a little fun, but it was pretty easy and scenic the whole time, which no complaints. No complaints. All right, campsites. And this is the question I get asked all the time is, how do you find campsites? And it's not easy. You have to do some homework. Well, it wasn't easy finding campsites, right?
No, it's challenging because you have to find like the right place, make sure that you can bring a trailer in.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's nothing wrong with staying at like a Campground of America, but do you really want to camp off the side of the freeway? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if time distance and that's all that works out. Then you know what? That we've done it before, and we're at a campground right now. Believe it or not, there's just nobody here because it's really cool because the campsite just kind of opened up. But we've been primitive camping the entire trip, and you found all the spots, and it wasn't that hard. You were able to do it, but just had to do a little bit of homework, whether it was surfing around, website, kind of searching around on Google Earth, looking for locations where there's primitive camping, knowing what the requirements are for BLM and State Forest and National Forest Service. It requires a little bit of work to find good campsites. You can't rely on somebody just giving them to you. It's better if you go find them and then kind of have a plan A, B, and C just in case you get there and somebody's there and you got to go find another spot. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fuel. We've been pretty lucky with fuel. We did bring an extra 6 gallons on this trip, but I think even though we didn't need it, because everywhere we've gone, we've been, within a pretty good vicinity of civilization the entire time. But we did have that fuel just in case, and so I encourage everybody to always bring extra fuel. But take a look on your route, because sometimes, there were a few times we were on some back roads for a while. We're like,
there's nothing.
Where's the next gas station? It might be a while. And so you start getting down, to a quarter tank, and you're like, I hope we find something soon. Make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you're planning your route is, are there towns, is there gas stations around? In the U.S. we're pretty thankful, but when you start getting off the beaten path and you start taking a bunch of back roads, it could be a while before you find fuel. And we've got mosquitoes flying around.
Yeah, they're coming out.
So that's just going to happen because this is a coffee one take. Food. I think I did pretty well on this trip.
You've cooked like Marco on this trip,
well,
I will say.
No. It's definitely not a Marco game. I've just kind of been reheating some food. We've eaten pretty good. But look, there's just something about having a good meal at camp. We had bacon and eggs this morning, and just this, there's just something about that at camp that just tastes so good. I'm not going to say don't. You can have mountain meals or, MREs if you want, but just a little bit of effort to cook, something like a steak or some chicken or some pasta or something nice. It just makes the end of the day so much better.
Yeah, it adds to the experience, especially when you're sharing it with someone and you have this view. It just makes the food taste better, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, so you said it. What was the best meal so far you liked?
The best meal is probably the salmon sandwiches.
Dude, the salmon sandwiches were
so good.
Pretty good.
So good.
Pretty good. That turned out really well. I was just surprised by that. So make sure, one, that you have enough food, but bring some good food. You'll just enjoy the trip so much more, and that's what it's about. It's about enjoying the experience. If you're rushing all the time to get from point A to point B, and then you get there and you just eat this rehydrated meal, I don't know. I don't feel like you get that emotional experience and get to enjoy it that much. So, and then here's the last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll start. I'm going to start asking you some questions where I think this is where it's going to really become valuable. Is you have to be flexible. Your plans most likely will change. Our plans have changed a couple times on this trip because of weather. We had to change our plans because we weren't interested in camping in 106-degree weather.
Absolutely not.
We were prepared for camping in below 30 degrees, and we got pretty chilly.
Yeah.
We had to make some changes because of that trail. But it is pretty common that when we're out on our trips, that we are having to change our plans. If somebody breaks, if something on a vehicle breaks, that may kind of mess up your time distance, and now you got to figure out, okay, well, we don't have that time to travel today. Where are we going to camp instead? What's going to happen the following day? If you get to a campsite that you had planned and maybe there's people there and now you can't camp there, what's your plan B? You got to be flexible. And for us, we had to be pretty flexible yesterday because we went and what did we do yesterday? I'll let you tell them.
We went on a really cool hiking trip, but the first trail that I had planned, trailers weren't allowed and there was no parking space. And so the ranger there was like, you technically, you can't even be on this road. And we're like, oh, well, we didn't even know that. And so we had to go back. I had to look up a different spot. And luckily, it was just mind-blowingly beautiful.
Yeah, I felt bad because, we got to this campsite, or not to the campsite, to the trailhead. There was no parking for trailers. And so we had to leave. And you were kind of bummed because you had your heart set on hiking this trail.
I was really looking forward to it.
And I'll tell you, I don't even know what that trail was. I'm glad we didn't do it.
Same, me too.
Yeah, because we ended up hiking. What was the name of that lake that we went up to?
It was Taggart Lake and Bradley Lake.
Yeah,
it was a combination.
We hiked 6 miles up into Teton National Forest because we had to change our plans. The best hike I've ever done in my life. The most scenic hike. It was tough. I mean, you got Dad's heart going a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely kind of a big elevation gain, bigger than expected for sure. So.
But you got to be flexible because things will change. And you know what? Sometimes when things change, it could actually be for the better. And that was the case yesterday. So those are just some tips and tricks from my experience. Now what I want to do is somebody that has never planned a trip, got thrown to the wolves literally and said, here, you got 7 days. I'm going to ask you some of the questions that we were talking about last night. So when I first said, you're going to plan this trip, what went through your head?
I was like, oh man, I've never had to plan a trip, and here it is, a 7-day trip to places I have never been before. I hope this doesn't turn out to be a bad trip, because I was expecting you to plan it, and I was like, I'm going to see all these cool spots because my dad's a great trip planner. But I was nervous at first, but it was actually pretty cool getting to plan it myself and really kind of explore these places ahead of time.
Yeah, I think it's a good, I think I've done it to you your entire life, but it's good to just get thrown out there and look, you need to learn this.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best way to learn something is just
do it.
And I didn't help you much.
No.
The only thing I did towards the end was just kind of look at the time distance to make sure it all sense. But I didn't really, even as we were leaving, I didn't really know where we were going.
Yeah, I mean, you gave me the general rule of 8 hours and under for driving each day. You gave me some ideas of like what websites to use for finding trails, and that was about it.
Yeah, I think that was a good lesson for me. Was we really need to communicate a little bit better about how much driving time we want to do during the day. And I think sometimes even I'm guilty of, we're just like, we're going to go from here to here, but we end up driving like 12 hours. And by the end of the day, you're just like, it was just too much. And so that's why that was one of my goals for this trip that I wanted you to really keep in mind. You did a great job. Was I wanted to keep it under 8 hours because I didn't want us to get to camp, right before dark. Although the sun goes down at like 9:30 here in Montana and Wyoming, it wasn't an issue. But we got to camp every day around 5 or 6 o'clock, and then we just had the entire evening to relax, unwind, watch deer walk through our campsite. I mean, it was just, it was great. So time distance, okay. So a little bit of anxiety planning the trip.
A little bit.
But as you got into it, felt a little more comfortable?
Definitely got a lot better. I think once I got past the first half, I was definitely a little more comfortable because I was like, all right, like I've started to get the hang of this. Like I kind of know what I need to do. Like it's halfway done. I've gotten us up here now. I just got to get us back down.
Yeah. And now that you've done it once, the next time will be a little easier, and so on and so on. And so I encourage everybody out there, plan a trip. Don't be scared. Don't just plan on having somebody else lead you on the trip. Plan a trip for yourself because I think it's worth it. All right. What was the first thing you did when you started planning? What was like the first kind of goal?
The first goal was definitely, I'm like, all right, I have to make sure that we can hit all these stops and get to Wyoming and have enough time there. But again, not drive too much because I want to enjoy every day. So we got to drive 8 hours or a little less. And so the challenge with that is, you know, you can't exactly pick a spot. You kind of have to see how far you're going and see what's there.
Yeah. I was pretty impressed with the spot you found in Utah because I didn't even know that area existed. I figured, you know, when we went from here to there, I was like, I'll be curious to see what he comes up with. And you found a spot up in the mountains on a creek. I was like, holy cow! Where did you find this spot? You found actually this entire trip. Every camp spot has been, dude. I mean, I think you keep topping them every time. That one time when we were on Montana, up on the cliffs overlooking that lake.
That was amazing.
I was like, how did you find this spot? And there was a rancher that came up later on in the afternoon. He's like, how did you guys find this spot? Most people don't know about it. And you found it, and that was epic. So, okay. What would you do differently if you were going to plan this trip again? What were some of the things that maybe you would do different?
I definitely need to be a little more thorough about uploading GPS coordinates because I had like a rough idea of how long some of these trails would take, but I mean, some of them totally wrong, like 2 hours, and we did one in like 30 minutes. Right. Just kind of having more of a set schedule and making sure that I was prepared, not kind of leaning on you to have it uploaded.
Yeah. So I did cheat a little bit. I knew where we were going in the vicinity, and so I uploaded the maps so we could have those for offline use. I think that's definitely something you need to do. And then having GPS coordinates to the trailhead, because there were times when, you know, we were leaving to go to the next place, but we didn't have any connectivity. Yeah. And so you're not getting on Google and just being like, oh, directions to here, because you don't have any connectivity. And so if you have the GPS coordinates, you can plug that into Gaia, and then you can kind of, or whatever navigation software you have, and then kind of work your way. So I agree. Anything else that you would do different?
Gosh, I just had the idea. If it comes back to me, I'll bring it up.
Okay. All right. Next question. All right. Weather. Did you factor in weather into this trip?
I factored it in correctly. I don't know what I was looking at. I was expecting it to be like 91. I brought like 2 pairs of pants. You gave me a jacket, and then we get here and it's super windy. It's in the 30s. You know, luckily we had our propane fire, and I was able to bundle up because, you know, even still, you know I don't handle the cold super well, so I was prepared.
Yeah. I always make sure. I mean, even if I know that it's going to be a warm trip, I still bring, you know, long johns and a jacket and a beanie, because you just never know. I would say we've spent more time in the cold than we have the heat.
Yeah,
right.
1,000%. The elevation's been high. The wind's been pretty strong.
Yeah, so making sure that you look at the weather forecast. I mean, it's tough when you're on a long 7, 10, 14-day trip, you know, but you can kind of project out, you know, like we're going to be in Montana up at, you know, what were we, 7,500 feet in middle of, you know, June. It's probably going to be cold up there. Yeah. So just kind of factor in that kind of stuff. Okay. So I thought it was really cool, and something we talked about I want to do more on our future trips, is this wasn't just about driving, hitting a trail, camping, driving, hit a trail, camping. There was different elements in this one, right? I mean, we spent an entire day exploring Yellowstone,
which was just the coolest experience. And it wasn't off-roading, it wasn't really hiking, it was just seeing nature, just such cool stuff that I've never experienced.
Yeah, I mean, we camped the night before, ran out to Yellowstone, and we saw, I mean, I think we did pretty good for you and I. We got there early. First of all, you're going to go to Yellowstone, get there early in the morning. But we saw just a lot of stuff and a lot of wildlife. And then the next day, we went down to the Grand Tetons and we hiked. And we just talked about that hiking trip. But adding some elements into your adventure, whether it's, you know, fishing or hiking or checking out historic sites, I think that's super important, because it mixes it up, and it's just, I don't know, it just kind of gets rid of that driving, camping. It was cool.
And it helps because, you know, if you're doing 6 to 8 hours driving every day, it's nice to get a hike in and get that blood flowing and, you know, get your legs working when you're sitting for so long.
Right, for sure. And having time to relax as well, you know, and we didn't do it this trip, but I think, you know, even factoring a down day into your trip, you know, if you have a 10-day trip, maybe schedule out 9 days and just decide, maybe you don't know, but maybe one day you're going to stay at a campsite like this another day. I think we could stay here another day. Our time distance isn't going to work for us.
No.
But we could definitely stay here another day, minus some mosquitoes.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
It's beautiful. So maybe when you're factoring in your trip planning, think about that. Give yourself a down day, whether it's just you're going to schedule this day to be at camp, or give yourself the opportunity that if we find something that's epic and we don't want to, move right away, stay at that site. So I think we're going to be doing more fishing, more hiking, maybe even bring a canoe or something like that. It would have been awesome to have here, and more down days in the future. I think is going to be a goal for us.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Now comes the hard part. So now there's going to be a video coming out for the first 3-4 days of this trip, and I don't know if that'll air before or after this, but I'll leave a link down below when it's ready. I want to know, dude, what was your favorite part of the trip?
I think my favorite part was the lake overlook that we had. Just that view from so high up and getting to see like the bald eagles, those weird turkey sounding birds.
Right.
And it was just beautiful. And, you know, the people were surprised that we were there because it was that great of a spot.
Yeah, it was awesome. In fact, I think, you know, we had to go to Yellowstone the next day because we had to start working our way south. That would have been a great spot to just do a base camp and then explore, because there were a ton of other lakes and other trails in the area. But that was awesome, dude. My mind was blown when we got there.
I picked the spot and I didn't even know it was going to be that amazing.
Yeah. So that was cool. For me, my favorite part of the trip was the hike. I mean, every camping spot was epic. You did a great job. Every trail was super scenic. Everywhere we've been has been awesome. But that hike, I mean, I've hiked a lot over, you know, the course of my life. And that hike was awesome. And to be able to share it with you, and it was amazing. So I'm glad we did that. I'm glad that we had to divert and go do that hike, because that was pretty cool.
The hike was definitely number 2 for me.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I hope that helps a little bit. There's a little bit of an insight on, you know, maybe if planning a trip and kind of some things that, you know, we did well and some things that we would do differently, and maybe some things we'll mix up in the future. I think, dude, I can't imagine not coming back to any of these spots. So we'll definitely be back to some of these places for sure. So any last thoughts? Planning a trip?
Just, you know what, it might seem intimidating and you might not always know what's going to happen, but that's the point, right? It's an adventure. You can pick spots and you can have expectations, and I think it's just fun to be surprised and blown away.
I think it's important just to get out and do it. Get out and have these adventures. You'll learn from them. You'll get better each time. You'll make them better each time. It's worth coming out here and making some awesome memories.
Yeah.
So, dude, it's been a great trip. I'm bummed it's going to be a while before we do it again, but man, if the next one we do is this epic, I can wait. So
Me too.
Awesome.
Definitely.
All right, guys. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with us for this Coffee One Take. We'll see you in the next video.